You're listening to the Sisters-in-Laws podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters-in-laws who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started.
Well, welcome, Sherelle, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Sherelle Gilbert. My day job is a victim advocacy trainer and family advocate with a child advocacy center. So I work with children and their families, children who've been abused and their families. So I basically offer support to them and resources during a very difficult time in their lives. And I've been in the field of child abuse for about 8 years now. And on the side, my side job, I do all the things. So I am a blogger. So the name of my blog is She Experienced. My small business basically is encompassed in that as well. So I create and design women's apparel. So like t-shirts, accessories, mugs. I mean, it's been growing. So my spare time is pretty much immersed in She Experienced. So I do that on the side. I've also have coined myself the title of a infertility awareness advocate. So since my fertility journey and just being open about it, I've just been sharing my story and just advocating for other women, really sharing their story and just not being afraid to, speak up and share what they're going through. So that is a little about me. I'm also married. I have 2 fur babies, 2 dogs, and I think that's about it.
Yeah. So take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your infertility journey.
Oh man. So it goes back about 4 years, maybe 5 years when we really first started trying in 2016. So my husband and I have been married. It'll be 8 years this year. And we decided back in 2016 that we were going to start trying. We had already been married for about 3 years. So we decided, okay, we're going to start trying. And after talking with a few friends maybe just 2 friends actually, who had dealt with infertility. And I just, at that time is like when I really started to learn a little more about it. I didn't know much about, infertility or treatments or anything like that, just, stuff that you hear maybe on TV or something, but I didn't know much about it. It was not something that was talked about. So when I had heard or saw that they were going through it, I just thought that was interesting and then never really thought much about it. But I remember having a conversation with a friend and told her, we had been trying for a while, but we hadn't gotten pregnant. I had several negative pregnancy tests. I mean, there were months at a time where I thought, I was pregnant, my period was late, or I just had symptoms that resembled pregnancy and nothing. I remember secretly taking pregnancy tests and they come back negative. So I shared that with a friend and she encouraged me to go and see a doctor, go talk to your doctor, let them know, you all have been trying for, almost a year or a little over a year and just see what your options are. So at that time, I think that was around 2017. So we had, like I said, we had been trying for a little over a year. And I remember one day, it was on a Tuesday, I was leaving work and I had a meeting to go to, but during some downtime right before the meeting, I went to Target or something. And while I was in Target, I had these severe sharp pains like in my stomach. And I mean, it was so bad to the point I couldn't even finish shopping. Like I had to leave my cart there in Target and I ran out to the car and I just laid down in the back seat just to hopefully, give them some time to subside. So I remember back when I was younger, I had bouts of this severe abdominal pain, and before I was told that I had ovarian cyst, or during my monthly I would have bad cramps. So I was just kind of told like, okay, this is something normal, and I thought that this was just another case of an ovarian cyst that had ruptured. So luckily I had a appointment with my doctor, my OBGYN, literally like the next day or 2 days afterwards. So I shared with her what I was experiencing, the pain. It had subsided that day, but I just wanted to make her aware of that so we can kind of look into it and see what was going on. And then in addition to that, I told her, that my husband and I were trying and we weren't successful, and had been over a year. So she was, right then and there, she wanted to start running some tests. So we did I did so much blood work during that time, ultrasounds. I did the HCG ultrasound. I just remember it was like a month-long period of blood work, ultrasounds, just all of this testing. And pretty much during that time, I would get updates. At that time, I was told that my AMH levels were low, and I had diminished ovarian reserve. And then I was told that there was a possibility I had fibroids, and also a possibility that I had endometriosis. So it was like a month of all of this negative feedback, you know what I mean? Like, it was just a month of bad news, in my opinion. And although it was like, okay, this is probably why we haven't been able to get pregnant, but at the same time, it was like, I just wasn't expecting any of that. So that is pretty much where our fertility journey began. That's when I got the infertility diagnosis, and that is where I was encouraged to see a fertility doctor. So that was September of 2017, and then my husband and I, just after having a month of hearing all of that bad news, we just decided to just take some time to just relax for a minute, because that was just so much. And we did see a fertility doctor that we were recommended to, just for like an initial consultation. And that doctor was like, right off the bat, he was recommending IUI. And we just weren't ready to start anything. Like, we just wanted to learn more about fertility treatments, because again, we hadn't heard, you know what I mean? We didn't know anything about it. So we just wanted to take time to just kind of educate ourselves about that, just kind of sit with all the news that we had gotten. So yeah, during that time period, that was like I said, September of 2017 up until like April of 2019 is when we had, just pretty much took a break. So I found another RE that I actually loved from that first consultation, and we were ready to move forward with fertility treatment. We knew that it was going to be expensive if we ended up having to do IVF. So we were just mentally ready to just see what our options were. I had shared with the doctor my history, everything that I had, all the previous diagnoses, or, all the previous diagnosis, blood work. We shared with him all of that stuff. He got all my medical records. So he did suspect that I had endometriosis based on the symptoms that I was having. And he specifically asked me about my menstrual cycles and my cramps and stuff throughout the month. And I told him, it was bad. And I remember he asked my husband, asked him, like, how bad are her cramps? And my husband had shared with him, like, there were times where my wife would have to leave work because her cramps were so bad. And my doctor turned to me and he said, this is not normal. And that was the first time I had ever heard that, because like I said, when I was younger and I would have bad cramps, like I would have to miss school because of cramps. And, I was prescribed birth control, and I was just pretty much told that it was normal. So I didn't think anything of it. I, had friends who had cramps, some didn't have them as severe as me, but again, I just thought it was something normal. So to hear my doctor say that it's not normal and you should not be in that much pain, it was almost refreshing. It was like, okay, wow, this is something different, something I had never heard. And what I appreciated about my doctor is he was more interested in finding out what the issues were, why we were not getting pregnant, getting to the bottom of that, as opposed to just jumping right into fertility treatment. So I truly appreciated that. So I went in, or he scheduled the laparoscopic procedure to basically either determine or rule out if we had or if I had endometriosis. And so that was like our next step. So that was July of 2019 when I had my first procedure. And just kind of backing up a little bit, one thing he did say to me initially was we talked about possible tubal damage. So even though I had the HCG back in 2017 and it showed that my tubes were clear, he was concerned that there might have been some damage to my tubes because of he did a saline ultrasound, and then based on some of the symptoms I was having, he suspected that there might have been some damage to my tubes. We just weren't sure how much or if any, but he said that there was a possibility that he would end up having to remove one tube or possibly both. So the doctor pretty much, made me aware of the different outcomes of the procedure. So it could have been just endometriosis, maybe not endometriosis, possibility of tubal damage, fibroids. He just let me know that it can go any way. So I was mentally prepared pretty much for the worst, if you will, just because of the bad news I had gotten thus far. It was like everything, all the tests and things that I had gotten back were just not favorable. So I just kind of prepared myself like, okay, this is probably not going to be what I hope the outcome is. The surgery was in July of 2019, and I ended up coming out of that surgery finding out that there was so much damage, the adhesions, the scarring tissue. It was just so severe that not only had it damaged one of my tubes, but it was starting to damage the other one. So the doctor ended up having to remove the tubes. There was the term that he used was Hydrosalpinx, which is damage or fluid on the tubes, and that was what was present. So that was very hard to hear coming out of that, coming out of the surgery, hearing that I had to have both of my tubes removed. I was hoping at least maybe just one and we could try naturally, but hearing that on top of the endometriosis, which he was able to get all of that, I mean, it was hard. It was a very, very hard time and so much to process. And then realizing that IVF was going to be our only option for conceiving, that was hard as well. And then it just made me think, like, if I had looked into this sooner, was this something that we could have avoided? If, someone took me serious sooner and told me like that the pain I was experiencing wasn't normal and took the time to look into it. But it just made me think that, at that time. So moving forward, the doctor allowed me the time to heal and recover from the surgery, which, was not bad at all. And then we were setting up or gearing up for IVF towards the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020. So January of 2020 is when we started our first round of IVF. And many people know that IVF is very, very expensive. So we were only able to afford one round of IVF. And my doctor going into it, he did let me know that because of the diminished ovarian reserve diagnosis, that there was the possibility I wouldn't get that many eggs. So for those who don't know, when you do IVF, on average, a woman will get anywhere from 15 to 24 eggs. And that's just an average. So for me, it would be less than that. So we knew that going in, that there was a possibility I wouldn't get that many eggs, if any, because of the DOR diagnosis. And so we started IVF in January and then had retrieval towards the end of January. The doctor retrieved 2 eggs. That was all that we were able to get from that round. And I was actually excited about that because I didn't expect any, to be truthful. So we were very excited to at least just have 2, and both of them fertilized normally, but only one made it to the blastocyst stage. So I was just so thankful and over the moon for just that one, because I had already been through so much up until then. So I was just thankful for that one. And we ended up getting that embryo PGS tested. Everything came back normal. So we were pretty much good to go, set for a transfer, for frozen embryo transfer. We were initially scheduled for a March transfer, but that got canceled. So this is a series of things that are, had been canceled or delayed, from this point. So March was the first of something being canceled or postponed. So we were scheduled to go or to have our embryo transfer in March. And then I went in for a saline ultrasound. So that's the ultrasound where they use like this water saline solution to basically see further into your uterus and all that. So I went in for that, and the doctor saw a fibroid, and he did not feel comfortable with doing the transfer with that fibroid in there. So he scheduled me for a myomectomy to have that fibroid removed. And luckily that procedure was right before the pandemic hit. So right before everything shut down, I was able to get that surgery in. Perfect timing. And the surgery went well. The fibroid was actually much smaller than the doctor thought it was going to be. So he was just very happy with the results of that. At that point, it was like right after that, the pandemic hit. So that pretty much canceled out any April or May transfers. So I just basically took that time to heal and recover and just, hopefully prep for a later embryo transfer. So in May is when things kind of started to open back up, at least for the clinic. And they contacted me and let me know that they were opening up and they were going to schedule me or prepare me for a June transfer. So went in again for more blood work just to make sure everything was good. And then the doctor wanted to do another saline ultrasound to see how things healed up after that last surgery. So I go in, and at this point, like the saline ultrasounds for me are like love, hate, and more hate than anything, because every time I had a saline ultrasound in the past, it's like always find something. It's always something. So with this one, it's pretty much the same. So there was scar tissue that had formed after that last procedure. So given that discovery, the doctor had to cancel our June transfer. I was devastated, if I'm being honest. I was just over it at this point. I'm like, I just can't win. Like every time it seemed like every time we take some steps forward, then we were knocked some steps back. So the doctor let me know that the procedure that he was going to do was to remove the scar tissue. And then afterwards, he was going to insert this intrauterine balloon, if you will. I think that's what it's, or an intrauterine catheter. So basically, it would just be inserted into the uterus and just basically expand to the lining of the uterus to prevent any scar tissue from forming after that surgery. So at that point, I was just like, okay, whatever we have to do, like, and hopefully if we can prevent any more scar tissue, that would be fantastic. So we did the procedure. Procedure was fine. He said it was very minimal, but he was able to insert the intrauterine catheter, and I had to wear that for several weeks after the procedure. So I couldn't feel the balloon. It was just inside of my uterus. I couldn't feel it at all. So that was good. But I was able to feel, so like there's like a cord that hangs from the catheter that I was able to feel, but other than that, it wasn't that bad. So I had to wear that for 3 weeks. And then when I went back to the doctor, they had to, they removed it and he checked and everything was perfect is the way he described it. There was no scar tissue had formed. So we were basically cleared for the next transfer. So that surgery was in July. And then that appointment to have everything removed and to, get the final ultrasound was in August. So we were gearing up for a September transfer. So finally, we were close to transfer. Finally, I had heard good news that we were cleared. Everything was good to go. We were excited and ready. So September comes and we were scheduled. We had our frozen embryo transfer. Everything went perfect. And by the way, my husband and I found out the sex of our embryo. It was a girl. So we were so excited to welcome our girl and to finally have this transfer. So the transfer occurred in September. Everything was good during the transfer. Everything was perfect. It was quick and easy. And then go back for 10 days for your beta test and it came back positive. I had tested at home, so I already knew, but it was just nice to hear that it was positive. We were just both so excited, shared it with our family and friends, and I had already been vocal in sharing my story on social media, so I was able to share that there. So we were just so excited, over the moon, ready, just so ready. And then as each appointment came, each beta would rise. So that was good. It was wonderful. So then we come up on 7 weeks and we get ready to go for our ultrasound. And we go in for the 7-week ultrasound and there was no heartbeat. So when the doctor said that, like, it was literally like an outer body experience. Like everything just blanked out for me. Like it's like I wasn't even there. Like it was the hardest thing ever to even process in that moment. Like I just could not believe what the doctor was saying. You know, it was, how do you get to this point? Like everything that we had been through, get up to this point, successful transfer, every beta was increasing, my numbers were looking good. How do we get to this point where there's no heartbeat? It just did not make sense. You know, it's like, God, this can't be right. You know, this can't be it. So after that appointment, my doctor did let us know that I would be miscarrying. There was no heartbeat. He said I would be miscarrying. So my husband and I went home. We were devastated. And then we were like, you know what? We're not going to accept this. We're going to go back in a few days. Maybe it was just too soon. We were just praying and fasting. We let our family know and our friends know just to pray for us, pray for our baby, what was going on. Like, we just were not accepting it. We just were believing for God to turn this thing around, for a miracle. We're like, God, we prayed for this and you brought us to this point. You know, how could this be it? So we were praying, fasting. We went back the following week for another ultrasound and it was the same, no heartbeat. She hadn't even grown. So again, it was just like, I can't believe this. You know, we could not believe it. We were praying, still believing for God to turn it around. I was like, we've seen God work miracles before. He can do it. Like, this situation is no different. He can do this. So that was the second ultrasound. I made the decision after that to wait another couple weeks, especially because I had not been having any symptoms of a miscarriage. No symptoms, no signs, no bleeding, no cramping, nothing. So I was thinking, oh, well, she's fine. You know, she's growing. You know, it just probably wasn't her time to show her heartbeat, but she's gonna be fine. And because I was not having any symptoms, my body was not releasing the baby, I was believing that God was going to turn this thing around. So we waited another couple of weeks and I decided to go to my OBGYN for an ultrasound, praying, hoping, believing like God is going to turn this around. This is going to be the miracle. This is going to be it. We're going to be the ones where we were told no, that there was no heartbeat twice. And on that third time, God turned it around. That's what we were believing. So we went into the OBGYN. And I hadn't seen her in years. So she was, you know, they were happy to see me, happy to hear that I was pregnant, and went in for the ultrasound. And they asked me how far along was I. So at that time, I should have been 10 weeks because it had been 3 weeks after that first ultrasound. So she said, okay, this is good. You know, we can do the ultrasound over the stomach. So she did the ultrasound of the stomach and she couldn't see anything. At that point, I knew, because I'm like, if she had been growing, we should be able to see. So she's like, oh, no, don't worry. You know, we're just doing a uterine ultrasound, you know, or a vaginal ultrasound. Don't worry. It's, you know, so I just knew. So when she did the vaginal ultrasound, and I mean, she was just silent. And I said, there's no heartbeat, is there? And she said, no. And I said, she hasn't grown. She said, no. So that further confirmed it for us. Like, okay, this is not happening. So that was, again, another devastating period for us. It was just so hard to hear that, to finally get to that point where we were pregnant and then we're not anymore. And to go through all the highs, the celebration, the excitement, the feeling the symptoms of pregnancy, finally, you know, seeing a positive pregnancy test finally, and to just pretty much have that taken from us. It was hard. It was probably the most difficult thing my husband and I have ever been through in our marriage, in our life, really. So we took time to really grieve and process that. Like, it was hard. And I remember that week, that Friday, it was a Friday when I went in for that ultrasound. And it was like, once I finally heard and accepted that this pregnancy was ending, it was like that weekend is when my body just kind of started to release. And I had a miscarriage that Monday. And I miscarried at home, which was our decision. You know, the doctor gave us the option to either do the DNC or to, miscarry at home. So I just decided to just miscarry at home. I didn't want another procedure because I had already had 3 and I was prone to scar tissue. So I was just like, no, I'll just miscarry at home. And that was just probably the worst day of my life to have gone through that. But I'm just so thankful that my husband was here with me. We went through it together. I was not alone. So yeah, so that was the Monday right before Thanksgiving. So the holidays were hard for us. We it was just a very, very difficult time. We were just grieving, processing everything, everything we thought would happen or be going on during that time. We thought we would be pregnant during the holidays. We just had to grieve all of that. Um, so we took some time from fertility treatments, from fertility talk, to just really focus on ourselves, heal, just really just deal and grow through that difficult time. So where we are now, we are at the point now where we're ready to begin again. So we will be doing IVF again here very soon. We're just waiting on God to give us to provide for us, because like I said before, IVF is expensive. So we're waiting on God to provide again, and open that door for us financially. But yeah, it's just, this journey is so difficult, so hard. But one thing that I'm thankful for is the support and the love that I've received. And I feel like I wouldn't have, or I wouldn't be where I am on this journey, like emotionally, mentally, spiritually, if I had not shared. Like, I truly believe this journey would be even more difficult if I decided to not share, if I decided to deal with this alone. Like, even though I do, you do have moments where you do feel alone, even if whether you share or not. But I just feel like the the pain isn't as great because I share, because people are supporting me, because I know that there are several other women who I've connected with who are going through the exact same thing, or because I know that someone sees my story or my post or something, that they're praying for us. So it just makes the journey a little less painful. So that's where we are now, just hoping to start our next round very soon.
Thank you so much for sharing your whole story and in so much detail, because I think that for those who traveled the road of infertility just know how difficult it can be, and how you navigated the system, changing doctors, finding someone else who listened to you, and all of the above. I'm so grateful for your transparency and for you to share it on social media. That was, most people like to take the 360 view and share the success. They don't always share the journey. So that's how I got privy to you, because I want to say it was probably April Christina that had tagged me and was like, hey, can you go pray for her, or go to her page. And that's kind of how I found out about you and started following you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like she's sharing the truth and as she's going through it. And that is just to be able to be so transparent and so vulnerable during such a hard time and difficult time all around. I admire that about you. So I'm so thankful and grateful that you shared it there, but also have shared it here on the podcast. So I would love for you to share just really how have you navigated the journey, the relationships you have with yourself, with your family, your husband, God. Like, how have you really, how have you, I mean, And then going through this while going through the pandemic. So, in any other circumstance, you probably would have had a little bit more familiar and friend support, that could actually physically be there for you. So
Mm-hmm.
can you really share with us just how you have navigated your relationships through your journey?
Yeah, so me being open and transparent, that's opened the door for friends to ask me questions, because I think sometimes people feel like they don't know what to say or what to ask or how to be helpful. But because I've been so open with, my family, my friends, and they're the ones who I shared with it first before I even put it on social media, I let them know what was going on. So that gave them a sense of comfort, or I guess a sense of comfort in asking me, how are you doing, or what's next, or just taking interest in my journey and how things are going, and or just also how the process is, because not everybody knows what IVF entails, and they don't, you don't know that. The average person doesn't know that. So I think for me, sharing my journey, it just opened a level of communication that I think otherwise wouldn't have been there. I think because we want to be sensitive, or we don't want to be offensive, sometimes we don't know what to say or how to say things. So I think because I shared and have just pretty much opened the door for people to ask questions, I think that just opened up just a greater level of communication and support from family and friends. And I think especially during the pandemic, like I had shared before, one of my posts or something, like going through infertility during the pandemic, was especially hard because, it's already hard in general. It's already hard on a regular day, but with the pandemic, it just brought so many uncertainties, or a higher level of uncertainties, because you don't know whether you're going to get sick, your spouse is going to get sick, if things are going to when they're going to open back up, if things are going to change. I know a lot of clinics, including my own. Well, no, actually my clinic allowed my husband to come in, but a lot of clinics did not allow your spouse to be in the room. So that changed that. So it did bring on a lot of changes. But I think with me just constantly communicating and sharing via social media, because that was the best way I could share with everybody, because it was so hard. I have so many friends and so many families. So the best way for me to share was like social media. So that's where people would kind of go to for updates. But then, of course, we'd have our own private conversations. But I just feel like that just definitely opened up a greater level of communication and even support among my family and friends.
Yes, I absolutely love it. So, what are the things that you are using? The Instagram pages that you follow, any other tools or resources, podcasts, books that have helped you navigate going through IVF and really preparing yourself for this next round?
Yes. So especially at the beginning when I was going through this, I went straight to Instagram and YouTube, because I'm like, especially as a Black woman, I'm like, I need to find somebody else who's gone through this, or who is going through this, who can understand, because I felt like I was alone. Even though, like I said, I did have two friends who had gone through it, I just wanted to find more of women who were really just also sharing their story publicly out loud and just sharing the process. So definitely podcasts that have helped me. Sisters in Loss, I feel like your podcast was one of the first ones. Yours and Monique's, Infertility and Me, were probably the two first podcasts that I listened to. And I can't remember which one in particular, but there was like one in particular from each of your podcasts that helped me out a lot. Candace from My Fruitful Journey on YouTube, I went to her page because she was probably the first Black woman that I saw that was going through IVF and that shared it. So that's also another thing that prompted me to share my journey, was because at the time when I was first starting out, I didn't find many avenues for women of color, and I just wanted to add to that. You know what I mean? I knew that more women of color were going to be dealing with this, so I wanted to be just another resource or another source of support for them. So going into my next round, my community, my resource bank has grown so much. I have just actually like 2 or 3 small groups of women will get together and we pray and encourage each other. I mean, I feel like going into it this round, I just have such a different outlook on it. And I'm just so thankful that I had the first round to prepare me or to go through, because now just the way that I'm going into it this time is just going to be so different.
So for this next round, are you going back through the full process, or you're just doing another frozen embryo transfer?
I do not have any remaining embryos. So we and I actually haven't shared in detail what we're going to be doing next, but we are going to have to go through the whole thing all over again.
Thank you for sharing that. The reason why I asked is because a lot of people may ask, they probably like, Erica, why didn't you ask that question?
Yeah, no, I understand.
Obviously, either way is costly, right? Like we know the
Yes.
expense behind it. But however, just the preparing your body for it, doing all the shots and the progesterone and all of that, that's a different experience. Actually it's probably the same, but still, it's still a lot physically on your body to do it either way. So we are definitely going to keep you on the prayer list, honey.
Thank you.
And you navigate through this journey, and definitely bring you back when your success, your angel is here on
Thank
earth.
you.
So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about She Experience, because obviously, I love what you're doing, the community that you've built, and then all, the t-shirts and everything else that you are promoting on Instagram and through your website.
Yes. So She Experience, I actually started blogging back in 2013 or 2014. And it started, actually, I was sharing a different journey, the journey of overcoming childhood self-esteem issues. So that was something that was on my heart to just really share more of that journey and how God helped me overcome that. Just a brief snippet of that. Like I was, and I've shared this on my social media recently, but I was born with a large birthmark. And in my childhood, I was very, very, very insecure about that. And I spent majority of my childhood just covering it up. And it wasn't until like I think I was 21, 22, when I decided to just stop hiding and just embrace it and overcome it. So that's pretty much what prompted me to start She Experience, to start sharing my journey. So I shared that, and then it just pretty much grew into me sharing other aspects of my life, other things that I had been dealing with, from depression and anxiety to just everyday things like dealing with, my dogs or marriage or things like that. So that is how it grew, just me really just sharing my experiences through life, different things that I was going through. And then it morphed into me creating shirts. Like I wanted more women to feel confident in sharing their story. I just believe that we all have something to share, something that other people can benefit from. We have testimonies and things that we've been through that aren't just for us, like they're for other people. They're for others to get encouragement and support from. So the basis behind me creating my shirts was to encourage women to share their story. So every shirt and things that I create are based on something that I personally have experienced. So my idea is that you see something on my site, you see a shirt that resonates with you, you wear it, and then the idea is for it to spark conversation, for someone to see your shirt and ask what it means, or why, basically ask what it means, and to start that conversation. I actually had someone who shared with me a conversation that was sparked just from her wearing my shirt, like in a grocery store or something. She was in the line and she was wearing one of the shirts, and a conversation between her and this stranger in line with her sparked from her wearing the shirt. So that's the idea behind it, is for women to really get in the habit of sharing their experiences and things that we're going through while we're going through it. Sometimes, and you've mentioned it already, but we'll share after the testimony or after the thing has happened. But I just want us to get into the habit of normalizing sharing while you're going through it, and that's pretty much the basis behind She Experienced. And the apparel, the clothes, the things that I create is just normalizing, just sharing your journey.
Yes, I absolutely love it. Love it, love it, love it. So I would love to wrap up with just you providing our listeners encouraging words, those who may be going through a loss or navigating through infertility. What encouraging words do you have for them as they continue on this journey through the rest of this year?
So my encouragement is first and foremost to trust God. You know, it's so hard with infertility and even going through treatments, especially if you are a control freak or you like to plan and have all these things in motion. Like, it's so hard to get out of that. But I truly feel like God allows us to go through certain things to bring us out of certain behaviors or habits. And my advice would be to fully trust God. You know what I mean? It's so hard. Infertility is so unpredictable, but you have to get to a point where you literally just take your hands off of it, off the wheel, and let God drive. Let God steer, because you can't control. Everything is so unpredictable. You have a timeline set in your head. You think you're going to start, and it could look totally different from one day to the next. Like, that's how things can quickly change. But if you put your faith and your trust in God versus your plans or how you think this should play out, or your timeline that you've set in your head, like, just put your faith in God versus those things, I just feel like the treatment in your process can be so much better. Like, not that it's going to be easy, but it just can be so much better and reduce your stress. Like, the less stress, the better. I know we joke when people say, at people who say, oh, just relax. But at the same time, like, it is part of it. We do have to, or putting your trust in God does, and take away or alleviate some of that stress, so that you can just truly rely on him and not get so focused on everything that you have to do. So my first word of advice is to just fully, wholeheartedly trust God. Another thing that I have done and I continue to do is find some Bible verses, find some promises in the Bible that you can recite and speak over yourself and encourage yourself, especially if you're dealing with, like I said, control issues or trust or faith. Find something in the Bible that speaks to exactly what you're struggling with on your journey, and speak that over yourself daily. Like, it has to be a daily practice, a daily thing. That has helped me so much, so much. I recently shared on my social media yesterday that I have been reading Isaiah 43:19 daily now since last week, and it basically just God saying that he's doing a new thing. So definitely find something in the word that you can pray over, recite, meditate on every day. Another piece of advice is get into therapy. If you are not, get into therapy, because IVF, infertility, will take you through the mud and back. So get into therapy, find a therapist that can help you navigate your emotions and feelings, and process all of that while you're on this journey, especially if you suffer a loss of any kind on this journey. So trust God, cling to some promises, meditate on those promises, get in therapy. And also, if you are married and you're dealing with infertility on this journey, check in on your husband, because I've seen marriages be tested by this journey, and the last thing you want is for Satan to attack your marriage. Like, he's going to use infertility to attack your marriage. So cling, you and your husband together. Like, if you gotta pray 2, 3, 4 times a day together, do it. Like, do not leave your husband out of the process. I know with women, we're the ones getting the injections, we're the ones getting all the stuff. So don't forget to check in on your husband, and you guys face it together, not you as the woman or him as the man, but you all face it together. So God, therapy, your spouse, all of that combined, and I feel like your journey would be so much better. Not that it's going to be easy, but it'll just be a lot less hard, if that makes sense. So I hope that was encouraging.
Yo, that was perfect. So where can our listeners connect with you after this episode?
Yes. So on Instagram, I am She Experienced, SHEEXPERIENCED. It's a mouthful. So She Experienced on Instagram. You can also find me on YouTube, where I go more in depth about my journey. I'm also She Experienced on YouTube. She Experienced on Facebook. And then my shop page for my apparel is Shop She EXP. Inbox me. My DM is always open. I love connecting with women personally. So if you are on this journey, you just want to chat, you just want to vent, I am here. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, thank you so much, Shirelle, for sharing your story with us. This has been
Thanks for
such a
having
blessing.
me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.